Hello everyone, my name is Cletus and welcome to the Iron Bars, my true crime YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's get into today's true crime story. And once again, we'll be dealing with life insurance. So if you think that Faith Ntombela is a crazy craze, wait until you hear this one. As a matter of fact, brace yourselves. But before you brace yourselves, I want to make two disclaimers. The first one, this case just concluded at the magisterial level where the bail application of the perpetrators were denied. And the second disclaimer, the names can confuse you, so you have to listen attentively so that you don't get lost between who and who I'm talking about. The interesting part about this particular story, it was happening in the back end of the greatest escape of Thabo Bester. South Africans were once again left with their jaws on the floor when they woke up to news that a dead man was caught by the police in a stolen vehicle. So this story is about a married couple by the name of Lerato Mahlangu and her dead husband, Thabo Mahlangu. Though the story was still a little bit sketchy, the country was still interested in finding out the whereabouts of Thabo Bester, the one that escaped from one of the safest prisons and one that was the best apparently in the world. And yet he managed to escape with the help of his doctor girlfriend, Nandipha Makutumana. However, the story of Lerato and Thabo Mahlangu made it onto South African people's dinner tables because they were talking about bold cases, the Thabo Bester escape, and people wondering how a whole doctor would help a prisoner that was serving 65 years in prison and they disappeared into thin air. So this story begins with a man that was driving down a street of a township called Hammanskraal in Pretoria when the police got a tip that somebody is driving a stolen vehicle. Of course, the vehicle was indeed eventually caught by the police, and they went to the driver to ask him where he got the car. Of course, the man was a little bit confused. He did not know how to answer the police, and this is when the police said, okay, you need to come with us to the police station. So before we get to the police station, let's start the story exactly where it all began. So we have a lady by the name of Lerato. Lerato had a boyfriend whom she had a baby girl with. Somehow, this relationship did not quite work out. So as a result of that, Lerato and her boyfriend by the name of Sitebe, they broke up. And after breaking up, Lerato made sure that the father of her baby, being Sitebe, does not see the baby at all. She blocked him in every way you can imagine. Social media, mobile phone. The man tried his level best to try and get access to his daughter. But this woman, Lerato, said no ways. So, of course, he fought and he tried to fight his access to his daughter to a point where he ended up giving up. The reason why he gave up, that's because he fell in love with another woman by the name of Lerato and also bore a baby girl with her. So I'm thinking maybe the baby was replaced with the first one and hence he stopped fighting for her. But at the same time, Lerato herself fell in love, head over heels in love with a man by the name of, you guessed it, Thabo Mahlangu. Thabo Mahlangu was a dodgy character. This man, at first, he started off well. He was making an honest living being a videographer. He would do videographing jobs at weddings, funerals, birthday parties, and other events. But somehow he thought living a life of crime is the best way to get wealthy. And so when Lerato and him found each other, fell in love, so in love that they ended up getting married around 2018. And out of that marriage, 3 children were born, meaning 3 daughters were born. Remember, Lerato also came with their own child. So it ended up becoming a family, I think, of 6 or 5. And as a result of that, they went and bought themselves an RDP house in Soshanguve. I thought RDP houses were not allowed to be sold because they are government handed to people who don't have homes. And I think one of the rules is that you are not allowed to sell the house. Instead, you handed it back to the government so that it allocates it to somebody else that is homeless or may need a house. But anyways, it is what it is. And so they lived in this particular house in Soshanguve happily ever after. But interestingly, because Sibusiso Mahlangu is now a career criminal and Lerato works for an insurance company. I don't want to mention the name of the company because at this point in time, the matter is not even in court yet. And we don't even know that this is a fact, that she did work for this particular insurance company or another. Once again, my third disclaimer in this video is that everything that I'm going to be saying in this video are nothing but allegations, because this case has not gone to trial or concluded by the court of law yet. So like I said, Sibusiso Mahlangu as well as Lerato Mahlangu got married, bought a house together, and now they had a big family. And Lerato, who was working for an insurance company, doing her hard work, because apparently she was a hard worker, so much so that this insurance company ended up promoting her to a higher position and higher salary. Obviously, she was doing quite well for herself. But you could not say the same about her husband. Like I said, he found a life of crime. I'm sure Lerato knew very well that her husband was not an upstanding member of society. He was actually a criminal. And then I kept asking myself this question, like, you work a great job. Why would you be in a relationship, let alone get married to a criminal? But then it hit me. In the same vein, there is a escapee who is serving 65 years in prison, and a whole medical doctor falls in love with him. Not only falls in love with him, but she helps him escape from a CMAX prison in Bloemfontein. Dr. Nandipa Makutumana. And then in my question, I'm like, then what seems to be the issue? Is it an issue of being stigmatized, if you know what I mean? Because probably they throw it down and these ladies are like, what? Yeah, I'm going with you. Or it's just good girls falling in love with bad boys. I don't understand. Please, somebody, you need to explain this to me because it makes no sense. So like I said, Lerato was doing very well as an insurance consultant with this particular insurance company. But somehow, the husband comes to Lerato and says, listen, you and I can become millionaires, you know that, through your company. And then Lerato is like, okay, I'm listening. And then he presents this particular scenario to her. Like, listen, again, guys, these are allegations. We don't know the full story of how it all began, but we are piecing together what we've heard thus far at the magisterial level when they were applying for bail. So now, let me get back to the story. He goes to Lerato, the wife, and says, we can make 2 million rand out of your company. And then she was like, I'm listening. And this involves life insurance. And then she's like, okay, that makes sense. And then after that, he says, but somebody needs to die between the two of us. And then she's like, because I work for the insurance company, it will not make sense that I'll be the one that dies. In fact, you the one should die so that when I go back to work after your death, I'm able to process the life insurance and then I get paid. The husband was like, you are very smart woman. But now who's going to die? Because he's not willing to die. And this is when Lerato comes up with a plan that, listen, my ex, the father of my firstborn child, has always wanted to see his child. Now, all of this is happening around April, May of 2021. Because Lerato said to her husband, in order for the payout to happen, we need to make sure that this life insurance policy does mature. And apparently, life insurance policies mature within a year. So if this is to be executed, we need to get you registered with a life insurance now, so that a year later, when we plan out our payout, we would get the money. So the husband was like, okay, bring me the forms. He filled in the life insurance policy forms in May of 2021. And then they were submitted to the insurance company and they started paying for the premium of this policy every single month. up until May of 2022. Is it May 2022? Yeah, May 2022. The wife says, the father of my child has always wanted to see his daughter, and he has not seen his daughter in years. The child was born in 2014. This is happening in 2021. So the last time Lerato spoke to her ex, and the last time the child saw its father was in 2014 when it was born. So let's cast that aside. She hears that her ex-boyfriend is unemployed. And so she says she's going to call him and pretend as though she has a job for him with another taxi company because he was a taxi driver. And this is happening now when around the 31st of December, 2021. And of course, Sibusiso Sithebe. That's a different Sibusiso. Sibusiso Sithebe, the father of her child, responds to the call, even though the call was a different number, not her own number that Sibusiso knew about. He picks up the call, and then she says to him, listen, do you want to see your daughter? He goes like, of course I want to see my daughter. And then he's like, okay, can you come and see her in the morning of the 1st of January, 2022? He's like, sure. So while the country was busy celebrating and bringing in 2022, Lerato and her husband Sibusiso Mahlangu were preparing for Sibusiso Sithebe to arrive in Soshanguve. When Sibusiso Sithebe arrived on the 1st of January 2022 to Lerato's house, he got ambushed by her husband, who kills him. After killing him, they start planning on how they are going to dispose of his body in order for the life insurance to pay out. Now, the interesting thing about Sibusiso Mahlangu and Sibusiso Sithebe is that they look alike. The same height, same skin tone, and probably have the same voice, I think. And it was going to be very easy for anybody, after whatever they will do to this body, to believe that indeed it was Lerato Mahlangu's husband that had passed on. But Lerato did not want any mistakes. So, on the 2nd of January 2022, Lerato gets up and goes to work as usual. But come 4 o'clock, which is knockoff time, she hops on a taxi, goes home. And as she jumps off from the taxi, she sees a thick black smoke into the sky. And as she walks down the road out to her house, she sees a crowd of people. Now, the crowd of people looked like they were either next to her home, like a next door neighbor, or they were somewhere else. And so she walks a little bit faster to make sure that everything is okay. When neighbors see her approaching, they come to her and say, listen, something has happened to your house. And the neighbors did all that we could to extinguish the fire, but the house got burnt. We don't know if anybody was in the house, if the children were in the house. Of course, Lerato, she falls to the ground, pretending as if she's devastated at what she's hearing about her house. And then the first question she asked was, where is her husband, Sibusiso Mahlangu? So people did not see Sibusiso Mahlangu. Apparently, she left Sibusiso in bed in the morning because he was still drunk from the celebrations of the New Year starting about 2 days ago. And so it's understandable because it's a typical South African post New Year celebrations. People continue to celebrate the New Year even a week after the New Year has begun. So it's not a surprise that he would be left in bed drunk probably, or hungover, or whatever the case might be, and Lerato goes to work. So he was in bed when she left. Now the fire brigades came, the police came, and of course an investigation needs to be conducted on the scene to see what caused the fire. And they go into the burnt house, they go to the bedroom, and they see on the bed what looked like a body of a man, half burnt. So basically half of the body was like burnt. It's not like beyond recognition, but it was burnt enough for the police to be able to tell that this is a male and this is a dead body. And so what do? They go to Lerato, who is outside because they cordon off the house. It's now what a possible crime scene because they don't know if it was arson or maybe an electrical cord sparked and caught fire or whatever the case is. And so they go to Lerato and tell her that they are sorry. They found a body of a male on the bed, and Lerato was inconsolable because she believed that was her husband. And of course, the neighbors, all of them, they know these people. They're part of their community. They felt bad for Lerato. But the kids were not there. The kids were not in the house. Where they are, I don't know. I don't think we even know in the story where the kids were taken to for this to transpire. So anyways, Lerato Mahlangu's body gets taken to the morgue. Now, in South Africa, when somebody passes on, they don't get buried within a day or 2 or 3. An entire week, the body will be lying in a mortuary. And there are several things that they will do to the body in the mortuary. One of those things is washing the body. But before washing the body, there's identification of the body. The body goes for autopsy. If it goes for autopsy in case of some suspicious death, in this case, it was not a suspicious death. The police ruled it as an accidental death. Maybe he fell asleep and an electrical cord caught fire, and as a result, the house caught fire. So for the police, it was a close and shut case. There was no suspicion of any foul play or anything like that. So as a result of that, the body then gets identified once again by the family, and then somebody is allocated to wash it. That is something that I'm terrified of that. I'm terrified of dead bodies completely. Several times I've been asked to go. I'm like, no, not me. I couldn't do it for my father. I couldn't do it for my mom. I couldn't do it for my sister. I couldn't do it for anybody. I don't care how much I loved you while you still had your breath in your body. I just cannot. So those are one of the things that happen. But Lerato, who is supposed to be an African culture, particularly the Nguni culture, when you pass on, especially your husband, you sit on the mattress on the floor with white candles lit, and you're covering your entire face with a blanket while mourners come in to comfort you and give you some words of encouragement, others coming to hear what really happened and things of that nature. All while that is happening, more people come in, they're singing church songs, morning songs, and then you have neighbors baking biscuits and making tea and making sure that all the people that are coming to mourn, they are fed and they're also satisfied with some kind of a drink or another during that week before the funeral of the deceased. Now, what Lerato did was like, I'm not going to sit on the mattress. I'm the one who's going to go to the mortuary. I'm the one who's going to identify his body. I'm the one who's going to wash the body. I'm the one who's going to take care of the body until it is put in a coffin and brought home on a Friday. Now, in South Africa, once again, I don't know about other tribes in South Africa, but in the Nguni, meaning the Zulus, the Swati, the Ndebeles, and the Xhosas, the body would arrive on a Friday evening at 6 o'clock. During that time when the body arrives, the family is the first one to view it. And then the next day on the funeral day, it's going to be viewed by the public. But people that view it on the Friday is the family. The coffin will sit there in the living room or in the bedroom of this individual while mourners are coming in and out the entire night. It becomes a night visual, if you want to put it that way. The following day, it is the funeral. The pastor comes and the church people comes. That is if the person was a Christian. And then they would have a Christian service before going to the cemetery around 10 a.m. So Lerato said, remember I told you the body is viewed on a Friday by family, and on Saturday it is viewed by the public, meaning the community that knew this individual. But Lerato said, this coffin is not going to be opened. The last thing I want is people gossiping about my husband, how he looked in his coffin. So she sealed the coffin. Now, because death is respected in South Africa by all cultures, so they adhered to her request that the coffin is not open. Now, the reason why she did not want the coffin to be open is because when people are viewing, they can tell if this individual is the individual they know or somebody else. And also, she did not want the Sithebe people to come and also to come to the funeral, and then when they view, they discover that is actually their brother. Because while Lerato was busy crying for her house that was on fire, the Sithebes, Sibusiso Sithebe's family, they were looking for him because the last time they saw him was on the 1st of January 2022, when he said he was coming, he was going to run some errands, he will be back, but he never returned. And the family, the sister, Lena, had gone to Lerato's house after she traced where the number that called her brother came from. And somebody at Vodacom was able to assist her. I think a friend of hers was able to assist her to trace where the number came from. And the friend came back and said the number comes from a Lerato Mahlangu. Of course, the sister of Sibusiso Sithebe knew who Lerato Mahlangu was. And so she went to her house. When she went to her house, of course, she found that the house was like almost charred, but they were using another house for her funeral arrangements, for the funeral arrangements of her husband. So Lena goes to Lerato and says, "Hey, have you seen my brother?" Of course, Lerato lies straight-faced to Lena and said, "No, I have not seen your brother." So when Lena tried to push a little bit further, this is when Lerato looks at her and says, "I'm not quite sure if you realize that I'm in mourning. I just lost my husband in a fire. That's my house." Of course, Lena felt bad and said, "Okay, you know what? I'm so sorry." And she retrieved and went back home without any information about the whereabouts of her brother. And yet the cell phone records show that it was Lerato who called her brother to whatever the conversation was, and he never returned. So, of course, rightfully so, I would have done the same thing. If somebody would have called my brother and then we trace where the number came from, I would go there and say, "Listen, what's happening?" I could not stop shaking the feeling that Lena may have had a teensy weensy suspicion about all that was happening at Lerato's house. Maybe she did not follow up on her instincts, but child, my instincts, I would have done some few little things to make sure that it is not what I think it is going on here. Because there is no way that her husband would die and my brother would disappear at the same time. What's going on? And the last time my brother spoke to you and then he never came back, I would have had some few little no, I don't think so. I would have wanted to know a little bit more, even though I was no longer going to speak to her, but I was going to go around, try and find. I'm not victim blaming here at all. I'm just talking about me, my instincts, what my instincts would have done. But again, she respected Lerato and her situation. She went back home. Basically, they continued looking for Sibusiso Sithebe. So everything went smoothly as planned by Lerato and her husband Sibusiso Mahlangu. And basically, he is now history. So it did not take long before the insurance company to pay out 2 million rand to Lerato, who was the sole beneficiary of Sibusiso Mahlangu's life insurance. Interestingly, the insurance company did not only pay 2 million rand to Lerato, but also restored and renovated the RDP house that she and her husband shared with the children. Now, Lerato told the community of Soshanguve that she could not live in the house where her beloved husband passed on in. So she is moving from Soshanguve to somewhere else. Of course, 2 million rand, the typical thing for many people is that they will leave the township and go to the suburbs and get either rent a house, buy a house, or go to the apartments, rent an apartment or buy an apartment. And this is exactly what Lerato and her dead husband did. They moved out of Soshanguve and they went to live elsewhere to squander the money. I think they realized that 2 million rand is nothing in South Africa, because within a year, Sibusiso Mahlangu was back doing criminal activities. You know, when I was growing up, my mom always said that a person's blood speaks particularly if you did something to a person by taking their life, their blood talks, meaning their blood will make sure that you are caught. And so since Busiso returned to a life of crime, he, like the dum-dum that he is, he steals a car somewhere, drives to Pretoria. Pretoria is a place where he's known to be dead over a year ago. Now, there are people that are saying, this car is stolen. Why is it running around our township streets? And this is when they tip the police and tell the police that there's a vehicle that is stolen and there's a man that's just moving about. I'm not quite sure what Busiso himself was doing at that time. Maybe he was sussing out houses that he's going to break into, making sure that the owners of the house are not there, only for the vehicle to be stopped by the police after the tip. And this is where the police asked him, where did he get the car? And he could not answer. And so the police took him to the police station to basically charge him for being in possession of a stolen vehicle. And before they could actually detain him, they first have to do some admin. Part of the admin that they have to do is to roll your fingerprints. And so as the police were rolling his fingerprints, and then they took the fingerprints to the South African Fingerprint Data Service, I think it's called. And that is when the fingerprints are pulled up and they say, this is Busiso Mahlangu, who passed away a year ago from fire. Now, the police are a little bit confused, like, but he is in the reception alive. So they go to Busiso and say, listen, the system says you are dead. What's going on? Now, Busiso, of course, he knows the gig is up. And when he realized the gig is up, he does not say everything to the police, but somehow he gives the police enough information for the police to go back and start doing a thorough investigation. The first place that they went to was an insurance company. This insurance company is one of the biggest insurance companies in South Africa. And this particular insurance company, I think they even have a bank or something of that. I'm not quite sure. And so they are looking for possible life insurance fraud because the police have been dealing a lot with such cases recently. And voila, there is Busiso Mahlangu, married to Lerato Mahlangu, who works for this particular insurance company, whose husband died from a fire in the house, a house fire. And the insurance company paid out 2 million rand. This is when they realized that they were dealing with life insurance fraud. So they go back to the police station and charge Busiso Mahlangu with fraud. But before that, they needed to go and fetch Lerato Mahlangu because she has no idea that her dum-dum husband decided to go to Hammanskraal and drive the streets of Hammanskraal in a stolen vehicle. And I still say it is Busiso Sithebe's blood that led to all of this finality and the revelation of his whereabouts. Now, the police then made an application with the Pretoria High Court to exhume the grave of this particular individual. And on the 26th of May, 2023, the court grants the exhumation order, and a body indeed was exhumed from the grave that is known to be of Busiso Mahlangu. And they took DNA, and when they tested the DNA against one of the family members of Busiso Sithebe, the results came positive. The Sithebes finally got to hear for the first time the whereabouts of their brother, who was not far away from their home, literally few hundred meters away, because the gravesite was not far from the home of Busiso Sithebe. And yet the family have been going around practically the province of Gauteng looking for their brother. And yet he laid dead just on the other side of their yard. The most upsetting part for me is the alleged I don't even know if to say it's a fact. Okay, let's say the allegation that after Sibusiso Sithebe was killed, Sibusiso Mahlangu took over Sibusiso Sithebe's ID book. Meaning everything that was Sibusiso Sithebe now became Sibusiso Mahlangu's things. The reason why he did that is because he knew that he and Sibusiso Sithebe, they looked alike, they were same height, same skin complexion, everything. And so he started playing the role of Sibusiso Sithebe wherever he was living. When the police got to his driver's license as well as his ID, they said Sibusiso Sithebe. And that's how everything was also confirmed by the family that indeed this is his ID book and indeed this is his driver's license. Remember, Sibusiso Sithebe was a taxi driver upon the time he was killed, even though he was unemployed as far as we understand the story. You know, I kept thinking about Lena, how livid she must have been. This is a sister. Went to this woman's house. Yes, she was mourning that death of her husband. But to think that this woman lied to her face and said she didn't know where Sibusiso Sithebe was, and yet he laid cold on a mortuary slab where she could have said, you know what, an accident happened between you and your brother. He's in this mortuary. Please go find him there. And give the family closure. Of course, the family would have wanted to know what had happened so they get full closure. But no, Lerato was determined to get the 2 million rand with her crook husband by lying straight face to Lena. And what breaks my heart the most is that Sibusiso, for the first time, he thought, I'm going to see my daughter, only to meet his death. Lerato, the way she saw evil, she knew that Sibusiso Sithebe would drop everything and anything he was doing just to see his daughter. This broke my heart, honestly. And I can only hope that the Sithebes are busy healing, even though they still need to find justice for their brother, Sibusiso Sithebe, because he deserves that. Nobody deserved to be deceived in the manner in which he was deceived. By going for his weakest point, his love for his first child. How evil can you be? So, of course, Lerato Mahlangu was arrested and she joined her husband in a cell. And the family of Lerato, when the news broke, they said Lerato has embarrassed them. But the question is, who is Lerato Mahlangu and Sibusiso Mahlangu? And I will also would like to add Sibusiso Sithebe's little background that we know of. This is just words of people that are close to these three that I am going to say out. The first one is that Lerato Mahlangu was born in 1991 in the township of Soshanguve in Pretoria. Her loved one, including her aunt, her mom, described her as a quiet girl, a girl that was smart. She was always loving, kind, and loved going to school. She had big aspirations for her life, which kind of like makes sense because at the end, she did go to university and graduated and found herself a nice job with a very reputable insurance company in South Africa. It's a huge insurance company in South Africa. So you can tell that indeed what the family is saying about her is true. Even her cousins, friends, and anybody that knew her always knew her to be quiet and respectful, hardworking, and made sure that everybody smiled one way or the other. It was in 2008 when she met with Sibusiso Sithebe. They fell in love. Sibusiso Sithebe was also thriving as a taxi driver in the taxi industry. They fell in love, and in 2014, Lerato gave birth to Sibusiso Sithebe's daughter, and unfortunately, that relationship did not last, as I've already said, and Lerato barred Sibusiso Sithebe from seeing his daughter for years. In fact, he never saw her after she was born because she would kill him, allegedly. So after Lerato Mahlangu broke up with Sibusiso Sithebe, then she meets Sibusiso Mahlangu, the thief, the crook, the froster, the one that came up with all these plans allegedly to have Sibusiso Sithebe killed for life insurance, basically faking his own death using the ex of his wife and the father of her child. Then let's talk about Sibusiso Mahlangu. Who on earth is he? Sibusiso Mahlangu was born on the 28th of April 1990, making him a Taurus. Taurus, welcome to the house. Come closer. As I've mentioned earlier, that Sibusiso initially started his life as a videographer, but somehow he found the life of crime and he became a career criminal. In 2013, this is when she meets the pregnant Lerato and they fall head over heels in love with each other. So much so that they ended up getting married. And 2 children were born out of that. I think earlier I said 3, no, 2 children were born and there were also daughters. And of course, Sibusiso Mahlangu took in the child of Sibusiso Sithebe as one of his own. Interestingly, Lerato's family did not like Sibusiso Mahlangu because he was disrespectful, he was arrogant, he thought he knew everything. The way he treated Lerato and the way he treated Lerato's family, particularly the mother, they just did not like him. He's the total opposite of what Sibusiso Sithebe was. Sibusiso Sithebe was well loved by Lerato's family because he was respectful, he was funny, he made sure that everybody was happy, and he treated Lerato like a total treasure. Together with the way he was treating her while she was pregnant, it was with absolute love. Now, this man was the devil himself, as far as the family was concerned. And they knew at some point this man was going to do something terrible to Lerato, not knowing that actually Lerato herself, I always say the quiet ones are the ones you need to look out for. Okay, no, it's a joke, because I'm a quiet one too. So you don't have to worry about me. The family felt that Sibusiso Mahlangu had also changed Lerato. She was the total opposite of the girl she used to be. Quiet, respectful, loved her family, to now a disrespectful girl who never came to see the family. She couldn't care less about them. And they were worried about how she was changing because of this man. Again, she was stigmatized. So if a whole medical doctor can fall in love with a prisoner that's serving 65 years in prison, yeah, it makes you wonder, what's happening out there? Is it in the water? Is it in the air? Where is it? I'm thinking of other parts as well. Of course, like I said, Lerato and Sibusiso Mahlangu, they fell in love, they got married, got 2 children, daughters. They bought an RDP house in Soshanguve. And in that house, clearly, they were conspiring to defraud the insurance company and also planning the death of Lerato's ex-boyfriend and father of her daughter. So let's talk about Sibusiso Sithebe. Who was Sibusiso Sithebe? Unfortunately, I could not find his date of birth, let alone his zodiac sign, but he gives me Cancer vibes. I'm not sure if it's the June Cancer or July Cancer. I choose to say July Cancer because the description of him sounds so much like me. He's kind, he's funny, he's loving, he wants to make sure that everybody is well taken care of. He worked hard, he made sure that his family was well taken care of. He loved his siblings, they loved him, the community respected him. He was doing well in the taxi industry, even though I'm not sure if he really lost his job or it was a story that was made up by Lerato. I'm not quite sure, but he was a well-rounded young man. The way Sibusiso Sithebe was so nice, Lerato's family adored him. They loved him. They always wanted him around. Why Lerato had to do what she did to him, I have no idea. I don't think any amount of fighting and disagreeing after a wonderful relationship can bring you to these hateful states, to a point where you have the father of your child killed so that your crook husband can make a measly 2 million rand out of him. I don't get it. So unfortunately, Sibusiso Sithebe did lose his life over the love of his daughter. That's how I see it. He loved his firstborn child so much that he dropped everything on New Year's Day just to have a chance with his daughter, only to walk into his death by two evil people. Not only they were evil, but greedy as well. If this is true that it is them who has done this to Sibusiso Sithebe, may they rot in prison. And I mean slowly. Slowly. Because what they did to Sibusiso Sithebe is unthinkable. I hope wherever he is resting in peace, but at the same time, making sure that justice is served. Well, like I said, this story is still ongoing. It has not even gone to trial yet. I'm sure this year in 2024, a set down for the trial is going to be announced. And once that announcement is made, I'll be the first one to bring it to your attention, and I'll be following this trial all the way to the end, and I will bring you or update you on what transpired, who was found guilty, who was acquitted, who confessed, all of that stuff. I will bring it to your attention once this case is concluded. So they are piling up these life insurance cases, and I'm wondering, if your family member comes to you and say, sign these papers, are you going to sign them? I'm interested. Please comment down below. I'm interested. I know you may be doing this in good faith, but now we have it in the back of our minds like, why? What do you want to do to me? You want to sleep with one eye open? I don't know. Honestly speaking, life insurance fraud and these cases, I think it needs to be looked at a little bit closer so that lives can be saved. You know, I kept wondering if Lerato can rat out on her husband and just become a state witness and tell the story and testify against her husband. Then I remembered, can spouses testify against each other according to South African criminal law? Let me check quickly, because I don't want to say something only to find out that I'm speaking nonsense. So let's check this one out. Okay, this is what the Criminal Procedure Act 51 of 1977, this is South African Criminal Procedure Act. It says South Africa codified the privilege through section 198 of the Criminal Procedure Act 51 of 1977, which states that spouses cannot be compelled to testify against each other unless the crime for which the accused spouse is charged appears in the categories listed in section 195 of the Act. Okay, what are the categories? But before that, I just want to see what's the definition of a spouse. Okay, the definition of a spouse, the term spouse under section 195 includes divorced persons, provided that the testifying spouse is required to give evidence pertaining to events during the subsistence of the marriage. Okay, and let's check out the categories. So the categories, you will find them in section 195, subsection 1, subsection A-Roman 1. Offenses committed against the person of either of the spouses or of a child of either of them included are the offenses of bigamy, incest, and abduction, and certain offenses in terms of the Child Care Act 74 of 1983, the Maintenance Act 99 of 1998, and the SA Act of Act 23 of 1957. So it says nothing about deleting of a person. So that means they're not allowed to testify against each other. Or in fact, they're not compelled to testify against each other. I also see an article that I would like to read. I think this one is an article from, I see something about Pretoria. Maybe it's from the University of Pretoria. I'm not quite sure. No. It is from the Jure Law Journal. de jure. I'll write it on the screen what de jure is. I think it's a law firm or something. They're basically saying, in summary, marital privilege is founded on the biblical principles of the union between a man and a woman. Thus, wives were not competent or compellable witnesses against their husbands. Over the years, the privilege developed in English common law. South Africa codified the privilege through Section 198 of the Criminal Procedure Act 51 of 1977, which states that the spouse cannot be compelled to testify against each other unless the crime for which the accused spouse is charged appears in the category listed in Section 195, which we just read, of the Act. There are many criticisms against affording a privilege to a particular class of persons, notably that non-compellability exception given to spouses is unconstitutional. I agree. I totally agree. Because what if the family is searching for closure? Their constitutional rights are being violated, especially the right to information, I think, as it violates the right to equality, or they're saying equality in terms of Section 9 of the Constitution. Recent media coverage at the Zondo Commission highlighted this conundrum, with the ex-minister's spouse was asked to testify. This article examines the merits of the unconstitutionality argument and concludes that spousal non-compellability fails to withstand the test against unfair discrimination on the basis of marital privilege. Finally, recommendations are proposed in this regard, which examine the nature and evolution of spousal competence and non-compellability in South African law. That is basically what the article is saying, and what I'm understanding is that no, spouses are not compelled to testify against their husbands or wives. So with this one, if they decide to go mum together, they will go mum together. The only time maybe one of the spouse may actually turn on the other one is as if the other one develops some kind of consciousness and they may want to give closure to the families or family of the person they had taken their lives. So I just hope, it's a little hope, that Lerato may be the one that breaks her silence and tell the truth, so that the family of Sibusiso Sithebe do not be put through a trial and the pain of how their loved one was killed by Sibusiso Mahlangu. I cannot imagine. I can absolutely not imagine what must have he gone through on the 1st of January 2022. We were all oblivious, celebrating the new year, welcoming the new year, whilst Sibusiso Sithebe was being bludgeoned probably, or shot, or whatever the case was. This one makes me upset, to be honest. I don't want to lie. But anyways, that is it with this true crime story. I highly appreciate you guys so much. I appreciate you when you click the bell notification, when you subscribe. I appreciate you when you like the video, when you comment. You guys, you know, I answer to all comments. And also, I appreciate you guys when you engage me and continue to support me by watching the video in its full length. Thank you. Thank you. You make a huge difference to the channel. May you be blessed abundantly. See you next time. Goodbye.